The United States citrus market is on the verge of a major transformation. After South African growers defied the odds to reach record-breaking export volumes to American shores last year, the 2026 season is shaping up to be even bigger. From the busy ports of Philadelphia to retail shelves across the nation, the landscape of international trade is shifting in favor of the American consumer. But what exactly changed to make this year's outlook so much more optimistic? Today we are uncovering the strategic moves and massive trade updates bringing fresh fruit from South Africa to the US like never before. Let's get started.
All right, today we're diving into a really cool story about South African citrus. It's a tale of how growers stared down a potential disaster and are now gearing up for a huge year in the US market. We're talking high-stakes economics, some serious resilience, and a supply chain. Wow, it's so sophisticated, and it's the reason you get those delicious summer oranges right on your table. So let's set the scene. The 2025 season, it should have been a total bust. I mean, growers were up against these massive financial hurdles that could have just, crippled their entire operation. But here's the twist. Instead of folding, they shipped more citrus to the US than ever before, a record peak. It's a classic case of turning a huge challenge into an even bigger opportunity. So you gotta ask, right? How in the world did they pull that off? How does a year that's staring down disaster turn into a record-breaking success story? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, we need to understand the huge obstacle they were facing right out of the gate. And it all boiled down to one thing, a giant tariff wall. And the problem was, it was serious. All of a sudden, their key products, we're talking oranges, star ruby grapefruit, lemons, they were slammed with what everyone in the business called prohibitive tariffs. And listen, this wasn't just some small tax. No, this was a move that completely blew up their financial plan for the season. It just replaced everything with one giant scary question mark. But this is where that resilience really kicks in. Despite this massive financial risk, the growers, they didn't back down. Suhandra Conradi, who's with Summer Citrus from South Africa, she put it perfectly. They have a 25-year commitment to the US market, and they honored it. I mean, think about it. They had all their volumes planned, their logistics were all set up, and they just stuck to the plan. They shipped the fruit anyway. That is a huge show of faith. And you know what? That commitment, it absolutely paid off. Because right as the 2025 season was wrapping up, the whole economic picture just flipped. It changed dramatically, and that set the stage for a massive breakthrough for the 2026 season. And here it is. This is the big turning point. For 2026, the situation did a complete 180. Get this. Oranges went from those prohibitive tariffs all the way to fully exempt. Yep, you heard that right. 0 tariffs. And at the same time, the duties on other citrus like star ruby and lemons, they were slashed to what they're calling highly reasonable levels. This right here was the absolute game changer. So the really crucial thing to get here is that this wasn't just some little discount. This was a fundamental ground level shift, is what made the whole export program actually make financial sense again. The economics became totally viable, and it just opened the door for them to have really clear, open talks with their partners in the US for the season coming up. They were, you could say, officially back in business. But, solving the money problem, that was only half the battle. Think about it. You can have the best fruit in the world at the best price, but if you can't actually get it to the store shelves reliably, it means nothing. And this is where their incredible, almost unbreakable supply chain strategy comes into play. First off, their timing is just perfect. South Africa is what we call counter-seasonal. So what does that mean? It means they start shipping their citrus at the exact moment the US domestic season is ending. So they're not competing with US growers, they're complementing them. It's a genius strategy that lets them fill this really crucial gap in the market, keeping those grocery store shelves stocked without flooding the market. And that perfect timing is backed up by a seriously brilliant logistics strategy. To make sure that fruit arrives safe and sound, they use something called a dual delivery mechanism. Now, the idea behind it is pretty simple. It's that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Or, in this case, don't put all your oranges on one type of ship. So here's what that actually looks like in practice. They're using 2 totally different shipping methods at the same time. So, on one side, you've got your standard container ships run by a huge carrier like MSC, but on the other side, they're also using these dedicated break bulk vessels. By running both in parallel, they basically guarantee that if there's a problem with one type of shipping, well, the other can still get that fruit all the way across the Atlantic. It just creates this incredible resilience in their system. And this smart thinking doesn't stop on the ocean. It goes all the way to the port of arrival. Their main hub is in Philadelphia, but they don't just send all the ships to one single dock. Nope, they very deliberately split the arriving vessels, sending them to two different sides of the Delaware River. It seems like a small thing, but that one move gets rid of potential bottlenecks and just massively speeds up getting the fruit distributed across the U.S. So, let's put it all together. You've got the ideal climate, you've got the brand new, favorable economics, and you've got these ironclad logistics. What does that give you? It gives you a really powerful guarantee for the 2026 season. It really boils down to three key things, right? You start with a great climate, giving you a healthy crop. Then you add in the new, viable tariff situation. And you back that all up with their amazing dual fleet logistics. And the outcome of all that? Uninterrupted weekly arrivals. It's a guarantee. And at the end of the day, what does all of this complex global strategy actually achieve? Something beautifully simple, really. It gets fresh, sweet, and totally delicious citrus into the hands of U.S. consumers at the exact time of year they want it most, right in the middle of summer. So yeah, the outlook for 2026 is looking incredibly strong. With the economics on their side and a supply chain that's been truly battle-tested, South African citrus isn't just back in business. It's really poised for one of its best years ever in the American market. So it kind of leaves you with this thought, doesn't it? The next time you grab a sweet, juicy orange in, say, July, maybe you'll think about the incredible global journey it took, the economic chess match that was played, and the sheer resilience it took to get it from a sunny grove in South Africa all the way to your kitchen counter. It's an amazing story, for sure.
Welcome to the debate. So South African citrus exports to the U.S. are, projecting massive success for 2026.
Yeah, it's looking huge.
Right? And on paper, it looks like this clear-cut policy victory. Tariffs on oranges have dropped to, absolute zero.
Exactly, 0%.
But if you look closer, the real hero might not actually be the trade negotiators in Washington. It might just be the ships docking in the Delaware River.
Yeah, the physical logistics.
Right. So today we are looking at what really drives global trade dominance. Is it the economic policy clearing the path or the physical plumbing guaranteeing the delivery?
Right, and I'm firmly in the camp of the plumbing, as you put it. You can have all the favorable policy in the world, but supply chain infrastructure is the foundational driver here.
I mean, you say that, but you really can't ignore the economics. I mean, look at the 2026 tariff optimization matrix.
Sure, the matrix.
Yeah, oranges are fully exempt now, and duties on star ruby, grapefruit, and lemons are drastically reduced.
True.
By dropping those tariffs, growers aren't just, saving a few cents. They suddenly have the profit margins to absorb domestic price wars, right? And they can negotiate these longer-term binding contracts with major U.S. retail chains. The numbers have to make sense before the boats even leave the harbor.
Okay, but the numbers actually didn't make sense in 2025, and they still broke records.
Well, 2025 was a bit different.
But if you look at the resilience rewarded data from last year, we saw unprecedented U.S. export volumes, led heavily by oranges, actually, despite massive tariff uncertainties at the start of the season.
Right.
To me, that proves their 25-year commitment to building this robust logistics framework completely overrides temporary economic penalties. The structure held up even when the economics were actively working against it.
I'll grant you the record volumes in 2025, sure, but you have to admit that was a massive anomaly.
An anomaly? How so?
Well, we had a perfectly healthy crop colliding with unusually high U.S. demand. The market was just so hungry for citrus they were willing to absorb those tariff costs.
I don't know if I'd call it just an anomaly, though.
But you simply can't build a sustainable decade-long business model on an anomaly. 2026 is entirely different because the tariffs dropped to zero, which gives growers permanent, frictionless trade.
But those 0% tariffs are completely useless if the fruit rots while waiting to be unloaded.
Well, obviously.
Right. Retailers won't care about a policy victory if the supply chain bottlenecks. That's why the real engine of this success is their Philadelphia hub strategy.
Ah, the dual vessel approach.
Exactly. Think about standard shipping, right? Massive container ships just waiting weeks in queues. South Africa bypassed that entirely.
Right, by splitting the flow.
Yeah, they split the flow of arriving citrus to both sides of the Delaware River. On one side, they used dedicated conventional break bulk vessels.
Which is huge.
It is. Instead of cramming fruit into standard containers, pallets are loaded directly into the ship's specialized refrigerated hold and then unloaded at a dedicated terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, they run a standalone MSC container service. By splitting that delivery mechanism, they completely bypass the port gridlock that paralyzes other importers. Policy didn't do that. Physical plumbing did.
Okay, but running a dual fleet, specialized maritime pipeline is incredibly expensive.
Sure, it's an investment.
Right. But that logistics engine only matters because of South Africa's counter-seasonal advantage. The fact that their fruit arrives precisely when U.S. domestic production dries up.
Right. The timing is key.
Exactly. But to actually capture and hold that market share, the fruit has to be priced competitively enough to keep shelves stocked without stalling out.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that delicate balance requires the new tariff exemptions to basically subsidize the heavy cost of the logistics. The timing advantage evaporates if the price point shocks the retailers.
See, I don't think retailers are as sensitive to those pricing fluctuations as you're suggesting.
Really? You don't think price is the bottom line?
Not entirely, no. Think of the U.S. citrus market like a premium subscription box service. Retailers don't just want a good price. They need an absolute guarantee that the box arrives perfectly fresh every single Tuesday.
Okay. Fair point on the consistency.
Right. And South Africa's Mediterranean climate, warm, dry summers and winter rainfall, yields structurally perfect, incredibly sweet fruit. Retailers prioritize that world-class quality and the absolute certainty of weekly stocking over just, pennies on the dollar. The dual fleet pipeline ensures against any single point of failure in transatlantic shipping. Reliability trumps the tariff sheet every time.
So, the physical machinery guarantees the delivery, but I would argue the restored economic viability from those 2026 tariff exemptions is what opens the door for these massive trade conversations in the first place.
Right.
It's the catalyst that makes the business model actually function at scale.
And I look at it as an invitation versus an execution.
Okay.
Favorable trade policies are just an invitation to the market. The 25-year investment in physical infrastructure, specifically that Philadelphia distribution network, determines whether you can actually walk through the door and stay there.
I think we can definitely find a point of convergence there, actually.
Oh, for sure.
Because the combination of optimized tariff reductions with a, virtually unbreakable dual fleet logistics strategy has created a highly formidable export pipeline for 2026.
Absolutely. When the physical machinery of trade aligns perfectly with favorable economic policy, the results are incredibly potent.
Which leaves us with a lingering question to explore as we look at the broader landscape of international commerce. When push comes to shove in the global market, does trade resilience ultimately depend more on clearing the economic path or on building an unbreakable delivery mechanism that can withstand any barrier?